everyone, and welcome to the Always On Point podcast here with Kristen Ambo, sponsored by my parent company, Point Mortgage. So glad you guys are here today. We're going to talk all things self-employed today. So all my self-employed listeners out there, raise your hand. This one's for you. We do a lot of self-employed borrowers. And the one thing that always comes up, never fails, is how much am I going to need to show in order to qualify for a house? And that's a loaded question because everybody's situation is different. Everybody's debts are different. So I want to just go through the basics with you of what you need in order to even start thinking about buying if you're self-employed. And by self-employed, I mean, it doesn't matter if you have an LLC, a partnership, if you are a 1099 contractor. All of those things are considered self-employed. So if you are any of those, you want to listen to this. And if you are not any of those, but you know friends that are, share this with them so that they can listen and they can hear on it as well. So first things first, I will start out by saying a really good accountant is a mortgage loan officer's nightmare. The reason why I say that is because a really good accountant knows all their stuff and helps self-employed people write everything off so that they can pay as little taxes as possible. Right? I mean, fair. The rules are there. You're not doing anything wrong. You're taking advantage of the tax breaks that are allowed for you to take. I have a couple self-employed businesses on the side with my husband's business, some of our businesses together. I get it. I get it. The reason why I say that, though, is because the government runs Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. FHA, USDA, VA, it doesn't matter. Those are the GSEs, or the government-sponsored enterprises that make all the rules and regulations for long-term financing, such as your 30-year fixed loans, 15-year fixed, 20, it doesn't matter. But for your long-term loans, not bank-owned portfolio loans. So with that, and actually most bank portfolio loans, from what I understand from my loan officer friends at banks, they still need the same income as we do. So when you are self-employed, 1099, LLC, partnership, again, doesn't matter. Let's just put that all together, self-employed. You need to be in that self-employed position for a minimum of 2 years. 2 years of tax returns. Why? Because it is such a variable income that we need to understand what are the highs, what are the lows, and we're going to average all of those. We never want to lend to somebody on the best year they ever had if every year they had prior to and potentially every year they're going to have again is going to be lower. The reason for that is because if we put you into a house that you truly can't afford, we're only setting you up to fail. And unbeknownst to what most people think, lenders like myself, my company, loan companies do not want you to foreclose. It doesn't do anything for them. It's actually hurting them. We want to write loans for people who are going to simply do this: pay us back. Okay? Now, most self-employed people who show no money on their taxes actually do make a lot of money. And that's very common. And that's very common thought is, well, but I really make this. I understand that. But remember when I said the government owns government-sponsored enterprise. So we have all the loan programs that we use, right? Including a lot of bank-owned. They need your tax returns. The government allows you to take all of these deductions to the point where you don't have to pay them any taxes or very little taxes, which is great. The fact that they're going to allow you to not pay any taxes and then turn around and use some other income to buy a house of greater means without paying them taxes, I'm going to say that again. If you think the government's going to allow you to write everything off to not pay any income taxes, federally or state, and then turn around and use all the income you made to buy a house without paying taxes, I'm sorry, but you're sadly mistaken. These things are all in conjunction together. It's no different than the underwriters who, again, are underwriting to Fannie and Freddie, FHA, VA, USDA. They're underwriting under the government's guides, regulations. And when a bank statement comes in with a large deposit, we have to source that. Why? Because the underwriters and the, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the loan servicers are looking out for money laundering. They want to make sure all the money is clean money, all the money is legit money being used to put down on houses. Taxes are no different. So they're going to allow you to take all these write-offs. But if you take them all and you don't pay any taxes, guess how much money you're going to show? Let's just say you wrote your taxes down to 0 and you don't have to pay any income taxes because it looks like you made 0 income. If you made 0 income on it and you bring me your taxes, guess how much I'm going to be able to add back? Maybe a little if there's some depreciation, if there's some rental income, there's a few things. But is that going to be enough for you to afford a home? If I can add back maybe $10,000 to $12,000 a year, on average $1,000 a month? Probably not. So what do we want to do? Well, we want 2 years of tax returns. We want 2 years of 1099s. We want 2 years of consistency when it comes to being self-employed so that we can take an average of those years. Most self-employed businesses in their first year or two take a lot of losses because they're building up. They need a lot of equipment. They need a lot of startup money. They need a lot of capital to put into their business where they truly are maybe making no money or very little. They go into it knowing the first couple of years they're not going to make much. They're going into it for the greater good to know that 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, they're going to be making a lot of money. So they're willing to do this for that first couple of years. Might be difficult. So if you don't show anything for the first 2 years, that's tough. Maybe in the third or the fourth year, you start to show a lot of income. But the 2 years of tax returns, 1 year you show a loss, 1 year you show a gain. If I average those, obviously I'm not going to be able to use all the income on the year that you made a gain. I'm going to have to average it with either a loss or very little. 24-month average. Let's say you made $12,000 in those 2 years on taxes over a 24-month average. Catch my drift? Not a lot of money per month. But let's say you've been self-employed for 5 years. If you've been self-employed for 5 years, that's proving to our underwriters and our government-sponsored entities that you now are showing consistency in that business. They then allow us to only use 1 year of taxes. So if your last year taxes were really good and you've been self-employed for over 5 years, we can use that last year. That might be your best year yet. We can use that. That's going to show us that year over year you have gains. And year over year on those gains and consistency, you've figured out how to manage your business financially. And it's still solvent and it's still up and coming. So then they'll take away that second year of average and only use 1 year of average. So that's really great to know. For those of you out there who might not know that, or being told by a loan officer if you've been in your own self-employed business for, let's say, 8 years that you still need 2 years tax returns, maybe get a second opinion. You might not need 2 years tax returns. You might only need 1. So that's really exciting there too. Now, with self-employed businesses, the other thing that we're commonly up against is getting all the documents. Self-employed, you guys, if you're self-employed, you know how thick those taxes are. We need every single page. Every schedule, every page of the taxes, doesn't matter, all of it. So if you've got those and you've got the paper copy and you don't have a digital copy, your lender's going to need them, bring them to them, they can scan them. Call your CPA, see if they can send over your taxes password protected so that way they're going over and they're secure. Those are things that a loan officer like myself, my team are going to need in order to look further on that. Now, let's say you have more than one business. Going to need all the businesses. Let's say 2 of those businesses show a gain and 1 shows a loss. We're going to have to, we'll show the businesses with the gain, but we're also going to have to show the business with the loss. So just keep that in mind that loss still could inhibit some things. Got a gentleman right now makes plenty of money. Even though his lease agreement shows, and the house is free and clear, the lease agreement shows $1,500 a month of passive income. Because he writes it off on his taxes and he writes off everything for that house on those taxes, I can use $89 a month for income on that. That was a hard lesson for him to learn. But, he, again, didn't pay any taxes on it, took the write-offs that he was able to take. But now, instead of $1,500 a month income, even though he's getting that, he's truly only getting credit for $89 from taking all the write-offs that he could for whether it be updates or whether it be maybe some things, that had to go into the house that maybe he could have afforded on his own to show income, those types of things. Typically, as a self-employed person, you don't know that until it's too late. And now we have to wait a whole nother year until your taxes come back because remember, we need the tax returns. There's really no pay stubs. There's typically no W-2s. We need the taxes. We need to show because even if, caveat, you're a W-2 employee for your business, but you still own the business 100%. If the overall business is showing a loss, we can't just say that your W-2 is okay because you're still on the hook for the business. So we have to incorporate that loss against the W-2 income. Those are just some tricks that were super important for you to know. That's why if you're self-employed and you've never owned a home, get with a loan officer as soon as possible to just find out what does this look like for you. Maybe you make enough income on taxes right now for the house you want to buy. Great. You don't have to do anything. Maybe you simply don't know and you need to speak with your accountant about what your goals are later on in life so that you can pay the right amount of taxes, showing the right amount of income so that you can qualify for a home. I can't tell you write off this and this on your taxes so that you make this so that you can go buy a house. I can't do that. But what we can do is we can reverse engineer. You want to be at a property at $350,000 and you have 20% down. That's going to take you to an estimated payment of this. What do we either need to pay off for debts in between now and then, or what do we need to do to show for income between now and then so that you have an idea of what that is to be made? I am not a CPA. I am not going to give you advice on what you should or shouldn't write off. I'm not going to give you advice on what you should or shouldn't be, claiming on your taxes. But what I can do is I can tell you what that looks like for your future goals so that you can work together with your CPA and you can decide what that looks like for you guys. They are the vested licensed interest in that. They know what they can and cannot do. You teaming up with them is going to be huge. So having that plan prior to is amazing. Remember, if you are self-employed and you go into a loan and into a house, you buy a house, and next year you want to go back, maybe you show gains for a couple of years because your thought process, well, I'll show gains for 2 years and then I'll buy a house and then I'll go right back to loss. When you refinance, because you're going to want to, if you're in a higher interest rate, you are going to have to re-qualify to refinance. You're going to have to get those tax returns back out. You don't just get to refinance because you get to refinance. There are a few non-income opportunities to refinance, but those typically come with a little bit of higher interest rate because if we're not using your income to qualify, that's a risk. It's a risk. So make sure that you are setting yourself up to win when you buy and later on, because again, in order to refinance, you have to requalify your debt to income ratio to do so. Have a new credit bureau pulled. You're going to have to show your income. You're going to have to, show your debts, and you're going to have to prove that you can afford the house to refinance. I know deep down that might sound crazy to all of you, but that's the rule. That's the rule, that you have to show your income in order to qualify and refinance. The other thing I've heard people say, and I highly, highly suggest you do not do this. Just my suggestion. Self-employed people will think that they can buy the house using taxes. And then after they own the home, maybe taxes are due in April and they bought a home in May, and we use those taxes and we close. They think that then they can go back to their accountant and amend the taxes down so they don't have to pay in. You guys, that's fraudulent. I would not recommend doing that. If you get caught doing that, you're going to be in big trouble. So do not think, well, I'll use these taxes and then I'll have them amended and then I don't have to pay anything and I got the house and now I didn't pay taxes. You guys just think about that out loud. I don't need to tell you. You know what it sounds like, and what it sounds like is legit. So be very careful. This happened once in my career of almost, I'm in my 25th year. One time in my career, I had a gentleman give me a set of taxes that I used to qualify. What we found out in doing the fraud report is that the taxes that he actually sent to the government were not the same taxes that he gave me. He sent the government taxes showing a loss, gave me taxes showing a win. Again, I'm looking at this camera right now. I'm speaking to you through this microphone. What do you think that did for him? I couldn't even stop it. I didn't turn him in. I didn't do anything. The government uses all of their entities in order to make sure that everything's legit. They're watching taxes. They're watching incomes. They're watching money laundering. They're watching the deposits. We are also watching overly like month after month, if we get your bank statements and we consistently see the same debt coming out, but it's not showing up on your credit report, guess who's asking for that debt, and guess who has to add it to your debt to income ratio, even though it's not in your credit report? Me. So if you have payday loans, if you're self-employed and you have payday loans, or you are going to buy now, pay later, Affirm, Klarna, any of those are being taken into consideration as a monthly payment. So beware of that. So if you're self-employed and you're using some of those things in order to get you through, listen, no judgment. You believe in you, and that's all you had to do to start. However you had to get there. Don't think that every self-employed person hasn't robbed Peter to pay Paul at one point in their life, because they have. Everyone starts somewhere, right? But if we see it and we know it, we're going to have to disclose it. So keep all of those things in mind. They're scrutinized. They really, really are, because, again, it goes back to the fact that we are not trying to divert you from buying a home. But we want you to be fair with taxes, fair with your income, fair with the money you have, so that you can afford this house, so that you can go into it, because we don't want it back. We don't want you to foreclose. We want you to pay, and live there and eventually own it free and clear. I want that, nothing more, for every homeowner that's out there right now. But there are steps that we have to go into that. So that's my self-employed rant for you. Hopefully it made sense. Just really think about it. You know, one of the funniest things in my world that, and it's not a judgment, but it's comical, the amount of people who, when I say to them, your taxes don't show you made any money, and they're like, well, no, I can write everything off. And I'm like, okay, but then I can't use that income to qualify. And they're like, well, why not? Because you wrote it off, so you didn't have to pay taxes. Well, I don't understand, but we make a lot of money. You do. But you also wrote it all off to show that you didn't make any money. So if you're going to show that you don't make any money on paper, then we have to say you don't make any money on paper, which means then we can't get you in touch with that house. We can't give you a loan for that. So there are a few other loan products that we can get around some income taxes for investment purposes. And there are some that maybe we do bank statement loans. Maybe you show me all your bank statements for the last 12 to 24 months and all the deposits coming in. There's a calculation for that. We can use that in lieu of income taxes. We can. Now, caveat, probably going to pay a little bit of a higher interest rate. That's the risk. We're willing to still give you the loan, but we're going to charge a premium to the interest rate. Not we, but the investors are going to charge a premium on that interest rate in order to get paid back, because we're going to take a risk on you. I say we because we're the ones that are writing the loan to do it, but the investor's going to charge a premium. Just like if you have better credit, more money down, and are truly non-risk people, you're probably going to get a discount on your interest rate because you're less risk. It's as simple as that. Don't take it personally, you guys. In any case, any stretch of the imagination, remember that we are lending strangers hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if a stranger walked up to you tomorrow and said, Mrs. Smith, I am going to lend you this money so that you can buy a house, but I need you to promise me and prove to me that you can pay it back. What are you expecting to get from Mrs. Smith? Some proof that she can pay it back. This is not personal. We are not out to get you. We are not trying to drive you crazy by getting all your taxes and a P&L if it's needed, and lease agreements and this. It's simply because we have to make sure that the hundreds of thousands of dollars we're giving out is going to come back to us via payment. And that's all it is. So when you break it down that simply, remove the personal side of it and just look at it as objective and, proving that you can pay that back, because again, you wouldn't lend out hundreds of thousands of your own dollars if you didn't have some kind of proof that you were going to get paid back. It's exactly what this is. So hopefully that makes sense. We do our best. I do my best to try to break it down as basic as I can in layman's terms. That's how I like things explained to me. So that's how I try to explain it. But if you have any comments, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, reach out to me. You can find all my contact information on any of the podcast platforms, including YouTube. Go over to YouTube, Kristen Ambos, subscribe, like. That way you get all of our content, shorts, including all of the long videos as well. And just to stay as informed and educated as you can in your mortgage journey. So thank you to all of you out there who listen every week and who have given us the opportunity to work with you. We are grateful. We wouldn't be here without you. And like always, hope you have the best week. We'll see you next.